want to start out, I mean, this is on the difference between allowing and accepting, but I definitely want to, did any of you, by the way, give a thumbs up if you can. I got to go on Valerie. Did you get the quick 2 questions that I asked you to think about before you came on? There was an email that came hopefully right before. But the couple of questions I want us to think to find the common ground. And part of the idea of these workshops is finding the common experience for people living with trauma loss disability, so we can actually talk about it in a way that you don't get to talk about it in other groups of people. Okay, so, and that means it's all dependent on all of us. So I do want to do the thing that is now going to always be how we start this. If you don't live with an overt disability or trauma or loss, well, that's a hard one because that includes everybody. I would like you to turn off your screen so people are on the front screen. I want you to go to the back of the room if you can. Like, I want Amy Burke to go to the back of the room, actually, right? And Bethany go to the back of the room, and some of the other people go to the back of the room, and we get to go to the front of the room because, damn it, we live our lives going to the back of the room in too many places, right? When you're out in public. All right, so hopefully that makes you go to the, but it's not working. I'm just seeing everyone's like, whatever, but that's okay. So I want us to start off by thinking about 2 questions, and if you can put an idea or 2 in a chat box, if you can do that. Otherwise, raise your hand and we're going to try to find you. But when you live with a disability, there's like how many times have you heard or had to think of yourself that how many things have you had to accept that the world expects you to accept, or that in order to get through with you know, what you live with, you have to accept a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm curious about, so some of the things, obviously I'm never going to walk again. That's an acceptance, right? There are other weird ones though, like I'm probably never going to see the upstairs of most of my friends' houses because that's not something I'm going to do. I've had to accept that obviously the sensation in my body has changed. I've had to accept that I'm going to have an added couple of hours, probably total, to my day to manage my body as I live through my day. I've had to accept, we've all had to accept, I'm just giving you some examples to tell you what I mean. We've had to accept all the ridiculously absurd and actually sometimes rude comments that come from well-intending people in our environment, right? Right? Think of all those exchanges. We've had to accept the fact that often, at least some of us get stared at more than others. I've had to accept that if I'm shopping with somebody, let's say out and about and trying to buy something, that they'll talk to the other person and not to me, even though I'm the one that's gonna like foot the bill. Right? I've had, you know, that somehow you become a third person in interactions, right? So think for a second, take some pause for a second and think about the things that you've had to accept, or the world expects you to accept, or your doctors expect you to accept. So just take a moment for that and put them in the chat box. I try to give you kind of like a wide range of what you've had to accept. Anyone want to raise their hand? Please don't let there be crickets here, because then you're only going to hear me talk. Okay. Joe, thank God, Joe comes in.
This is really quite out there, but accept that you're going to be asked extremely personal questions that are none of their damn business.
That would be exactly right, right? I mean, anyone have an example of a story you can think of that you want to tell? Right? I mean, believe me, most of these interactions are stories, actually.
Well, when a perfect stranger asks you, which has happened to me, how do you have sex?
You're kidding me, a perfect stranger did?
Yeah.
Holy crap.
My response was, are you offering?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did they take that? By the way, in this generation, you can't. It was a question from a male or a female.
It was a male.
It was a male.
It was a male, and it was in line at Target.
In line at,
Oh,
Yeah.
you have, okay, that's a beautiful, I mean, there's a whole story waiting to be told there. with
And,
the
and he
detail.
didn't have any further response, and that was the end of our conversation. So
Did anyone overhear it? Was this like somebody yelled across the line?
the checkout gal was standing there and just did not know what to do. And it was very uncomfortable. And I grabbed my stuff and went out of the store.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else? Poppy, Poppy put something in the box?
Poppy has her hand up, and we have a couple things in the chat box, Matt.
Okay.
Poppy, go ahead.
I think my favorite thing is people are so shocked that you can be just, it's in relation to Joe's statement about sex. When I was married, they were so shocked that I was married. They were like, the immediate question that followed after noticing my wedding ring, is your husband normal? I was like,
Oh my God.
what do you mean? What do you like? I mean, what do you mean? Like, I didn't, and they were genuinely curious. It was genuinely not meant to offend. And I sat there also in Target. I don't know what it
In
is.
Target? I usually happen to be in the grocery store, but
I don't know what it is. Target.
Unbelievable.
But maybe Target is the target. I don't know. Maybe that's the irony there. But that's the biggest thing is we're just not looked at as normal beings.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I can understand genuine curiosity, and I've said this before. I don't mind the general curiosity of children because they're trying to figure out their world. They're trying to figure out what's happening. It's genuine, it's pure. Whereas personally, I have a harder time with adults. You should know better to ask those particular questions.
Yeah.
I mean,
And then it's amazing that Joe,
I guess my biggest thing is if you have those questions, talk to your doctor. Don't
Right.
talk to your doctor. They will be the best person to say if it is a human's body. In most cases, their body will be normal, except for what makes them unique or quote not normal. But that's my biggest thing is the question is about everything that happens to everyone else that isn't questioned to them, but we get those questions.
Would you ask somebody else in line in Target that same question? Right.
Yeah, you can. So there's like one here. Some religious people think they can heal me by praying over me or laying their damn hand on me. We've all had that experience, right? I mean, I've had that more than I even know what to say about that. Oh, Kristen Frank, I love that. But you look okay, right? When you say something like, right? So, having to accept chronic pain, chronic fatigue. Yeah, accepting that I look perfectly fine. Now, this is where the next level of question I wanted to ask, because we're all talking about things of interactions with the world, right? But part of this discussion needs to be also what internal. No one knows or realizes the things I face, not even my dear friends. Now, that's exactly true. Like the world that I actually inhabit and you actually inhabit, I'll get to you in a second, Rodrigo, right? See your hands up. There are all these little places and big places where your experience can never truly, even when you try to, I've had the disappointment of trying to explain some of those places, Jenny, and it doesn't work. It falls dead. They don't even have the framework in order to hear some of the little things. And that's like a big deal. Rodrigo.
One thing that's happens to me quite often, especially in Brazil, not here in Sweden, but in Brazil, Brazilians, we are very Catholic, we're very we believe in having generosity and all that. And so many times when I am in the queue in the supermarket, last time I was in Brazil, even happened in the bakery. Someone comes to me and asks for my name because they want to pray for me so I can start walking again. And then it's like, it happens about 5 or 6 times. And then I'm like, oh my God, there's so many things in the world that should be prayed for. It's like, I am doing okay. It's like, I don't even care about it. It's like, if I can't walk anymore, no, but it's like, tell me, we're going to pray for you. And it's like, it's just tiring. And other times when I go to a bar and drunk people come to congratulate me that I am out, oh man, it's so nice to see you here. I was right over there. I was talking to my friends. Look at that guy over there. He's in a wheelchair. Look at how inspirational he is. You out, you're having a good time. Good on you, mate. Good on you. And then it's like, it happens all the time as well.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
Those are all things. I never drive a car again, hold a baby. That's intense. Those are part of the little things and the little losses. Accepting that I won't, unless I actively try to do it, I'm not going to be in contact with the ground or the earth as much. Something we talk a lot about in yoga. Like there are things that you're not going to live as connected to the earth, right? Through tactile sensation, which is a great thing. Is your hand still up on purpose? Are you got more, Rodrigo? Okay, you're good. Anyone else? Boy, they're coming in here. Oh, with the mental illness, I have to allow people in my lives I'd rather not. I have that, even though, well, arguably I do have mental illness, but arguably I have that regardless of mental illness, that there are, invasions you have from all sorts of people, because I'm dependent and not fully independent. That's a big thing.
Matt just said something about early on in the chat about meeting with social workers. So, meeting with other healthcare providers, I'm guessing might be a sticking point too.
Who's this?
Just said earlier in the chat that meeting with social workers is particularly difficult, and that may include other healthcare providers as well, I'm guessing.
Yeah, no, I think that there's all of that. There's, and then there's the little things like, now the next question that I want to kind of get out here a little bit is, what are some things that you've had to accept that might surprise the people around you? Okay, so like there's the outward story and the interactions with people. Like, for example, like, especially since I tore my rotator cuff, there's and this I got to imagine is in a lot of your lives, like there's an increased level of uncertainty in everything I do, in every transfer I make, right? There's does anyone have like a backup plan in their head at all times? What if this happens? Right? Like what if I fall and I don't do this, and what if this goes up, or what if something breaks in the basement and I can't quite get down there? Like I have a whole series of damage control plans in my head that I carry, at various times all the time, right? So like there's that quiet level of uncertainty that's constantly there, right? That is something that people don't know unless you live with it every single day. They think they can intellectually get it. Whether chronic fatigue would be another example of something that's like, it's constantly there. I think I'm looking right at you, Jenny, but I'm not actually, but just know I'm looking right at your box, right? Like thinking like that's another one. But like, that's a big one, but are there any other things, places in your life, like I have to accept that if I'm in New York City, I'm not going to be able to flag down a cab. That'd be another outward one. But I'm going to have to like get someone who's able-bodied to flag down the cab and then do the bait and switch on them, right? And then say, you got to do my, there are things like that. But anything on the inside that is in your life that people don't really Because one of the things that I believe is that we have to get better at telling our stories for people to understand what it's actually like to live with a disability. So when we talk about these things, like, it'd be great. Like, I'd love for us to start a log or a series of short stories of these little places that you recognize that, oh my God, no one really knows that I have to do this, or, you know, things like that, because those are some of the stories that need to get out. Anyone have any other places in your life, little places that actually people would be surprised? Come on now, they're there. We're just not used to dredging them up.
I think that that what you say about uncertainty feels profoundly true for me. And then underneath that is just a chronic, intractable fear.
Yeah, that's like, yeah.
Yeah, and I think people would be surprised at the depth.
Yeah, of that. Yeah, for sure.
And pervasiveness. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not quite knowing. Yeah, that's the uncertainty thing. Thumbs up from people, like, I get that. So Laura, just because, like, I've acquired a disability, right? So, like, I was 13 and then acquired disability, and you were born with Unpoppy, you too, right? And as you, like, thought about your life, right? Like, what are some of the things that you didn't even know you necessarily had to accept, or you had to accept or think about because, you know, your life arc is different? Or, like, for example, I try to imagine Chris Becker as one of my oldest student of all times, who has had to continually feel and recognize that he can't, because of the way his cerebral palsy is, can't actually bring his hand to his mouth and feed himself. Right? So every time he wants to eat, he's having to be incredibly patient. Right?
Yeah.
It's a stunning teacher, right? For him. Right? So Laura, do you have anything like that as a kid growing up and thinking about trying to be normal in school?
Yeah, I mean, now that you said that one, these kind of make me look quite shallow, but
No. Shallows are the ones that are more real. They're not shallow. They're actually quite deep. They're little and big and
I think when
pervasive.
I was a girl, I wanted to be like very feminine, and I thought wheelchairs were not feminine. And that high heels were a thing I was never going to get to wear, which makes me sound a little bit shallow.
No, I think that's fabulous.
But those are the things that I found sort of sad that I never get to do. Even though my friends constantly tell me I'm not missing anything wearing high heels, we have this conversation.
Yeah, what do they know though, right?
But
I mean, honestly.
I kind of thought I'd miss out on looking
Same
like
about
a
the
shirt.
heels, Laura. This
Huh?
is Poppy speaking. This is Poppy speaking. Same about the heels.
Yeah.
I told those shoes sit and look pretty because that's all I can
I
do.
just thought they made you look pretty. I was like, I'm never gonna be pretty.
I know.
It
I
was traumatic.
hear you.
Yeah. So it was the pretty thing, because I think to me, the wheels, like everything in that context was kind of functional looking and not pretty looking. And it's changed a bit as time has gone on. People have made certain things look prettier, but certainly when I had wheelchairs and stuff at the beginning, nothing looked pretty. It was all very functional looking and metal and steel and, you know, things that I didn't think looked very pretty.
So, like, for me, there's also like that even translates to your body, right? What parts of your body have different you've had to accept?
Yeah.
Right? Like
Well,
the heels are an example of a certain type of expression, right?
Yeah.
But there's also, like, no matter what I do, my legs are not going to be looking svelte, right?
Yeah.
They're-
I have
they're
about,
gonna-
this about feet. Like, I cut my feet out of every photograph ever before I came to MBS. Now I don't do it anymore because your voice is in the back of my head going, don't cut the feet picture out. So I don't do it anymore. But I used to cut them out of everything. They're not that
Yeah.
pretty.
There's some things here's a question, I guess. Oh no, wait. Amy, just read the ones because I'm not being able to keep track of stuff.
Yeah, so we've got some responses in the chat. The danger to my life when I have a pressure sore is something that people don't understand.
Oh, God, yes.
Oh yeah, Joe, who's had. Yeah, I was just in because I got a cut on my toe. I was just in urgent care because it started to get so infected in a weird way that I had to go, and I knew it wasn't in the bones. So, but the doctor was freaked out because I have swelling in my legs. You know, after 42 years, I don't, you know, my legs swelling. So he's thinking that's the infection, and the discoloration a little bit. So I have to get an X-ray, and I get a huge booster shot of antibiotics and 2 weeks of prescription. So like I'm right now a river of antibiotics in my body because of there is that threat, and he's thinking you could die from this. So that's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, so there's some really good ones. Poppy, we'll get to you in just a sec. So I see that your hand is up, but we've also got Jess saying that every pose is almost like diving to the depths of the unknown to discover the new. Causing harm in an attempt to keep up with friends or family, pushing past your edges, then feel like I create pain on purpose out of victimization.
Holy crimes! Who's saying this stuff?
That's from Kristen.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Here's another one. For me, what's surprising to others is times of loneliness.
Say that again.
What's surprising to others is times of loneliness.
Anyone want to comment on that? I remember that I've always, when you live with disability in relationship to the culture, like when I go back, you know, I'm injured in 7th grade, I go back to 8th grade. And I've had a set of experiences that I can barely even hold in my head right now at 55, right? So I have these experiences as a 13-year-old kid, have been through things that I could never communicate to anyone, even my closest people. And yet I'm trying to like fit in junior high with people around me, knowing that there's a gigantic chasm between me and others, right? And that gap, do you try to bridge it? Do you try to fight through it? Do you have to accept that you're always kind of living a secret? You know, like there, you know, I do it in terms of secrets. I like to empower secrets that my life living with, you know, I say people, I have certain funny lines I say when they want to know about how I don't get asked, I don't think I've ever been asked directly how I have sex, Joe. So you're like in new territory for me there. Usually I ask the person next to me, well, how does he have sex, right?
I've been asked many times, so I understand how you feel.
Yeah, but like that can cause a form of isolation or feeling that no one gets it. But you know, that is part of the human condition too. Anyone else have anything we want to?
Yeah, we have several things. Susan said, my husband was born with one arm. He is asked if he had 2 arms, would he be right-handed rather than left-handed? At a costume party, he was asked where he got the awesome hook for his costume. These things go on and on. Mary Peterson said, accepting anger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone got any great tips about that one? Or dealing with fear? Because usually fear and anger, or sadness and anger are 2 sides of the same coin, right? You got things underneath. Anyone got any good?
Well, I was just going to piggyback on something you said, Matt, which earlier we were saying about people coming up to you and saying things or whatever. You know, sometimes if you tell people those stories, like, oh my God, like, why didn't you say it's none of your business or whatever? But I have to assess in every person whether it's going to be dangerous or not to answer that question in that way, because some people can get very hostile if you don't want to answer the question, or you know, get very like confrontational, and I don't want to do that, like, you know. And because I don't know if I'm safe to get out of a situation, I have to play it nice, because I feel for personal safety it's the easiest way to act.
Laura, they kind of turn it back on you as now you're being the rude person. It's like,
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. The perpetrator becomes the victim really quickly when they're on, yeah. I see this one from Pat. When I was a teenager, I wanted to be male because I thought about so much so much discrimination for females. That is actually one of those things that anyone else want to comment on that one? That's a big one. As a male, I'm probably not going to be the great, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah. This is Poppy speaking again. I definitely for a long time wanted to be a boy because I noticed even in the disability community, from my perspective at the time, being a young kid, there was more access because I felt like men, quote, boys, were being listened to more. There weren't people playing sports, and I was one of my generation that was fighting that, like basically kind of actively giving the finger of saying, no, I'm playing sport. I don't care. I don't care that I'm playing against boys. I mean, I don't know for me if it's because I grew up with brothers, and so that kind of interplay dynamic, and I was just naturally tomboyish anyway. It was natural for me, and I wanted to. But then you have the fact of I'm female, but then you have the fact that I'm disabled, and there wasn't a lot of sports that were a lot of it was being worked on behind the scenes, but you didn't see it. Like, for example, I was not capable of playing wheelchair basketball because of not having the proper balance and strength of one arm being basically normal length and pretty much normal range on my left, and then my right one has got a L shape in my arm, which didn't equally give me good pressure to push a normal chair. So I'm fighting within these adaptive sports that were predominantly male. And again, I'm small. Okay, at the time I was 4'11" and probably a buck wet at the time. And I'm playing and I'm getting roughed up, but I want to get roughed up. But because I'm small, everyone's thinking she can't do it. I'm like, and I'm just like, if they can do it, yes, I can. But yet I'm being told that I can't, that I shouldn't. My parents are being questioned when my parents are basically at the point, we got to put her in something or she's going to drive us insane.
Yeah, so you're pushing it. And so what I want to try to now is start to shift a little bit in this discussion towards this distinction about allowing as opposed to accepting. Now, here's the things I'm going to read a little bit from my book right now, but okay, and although it may seem like what I'm trying to introduce is just a semantical difference, right? I don't think it is, and especially as I teach the yoga practice in this session, I want you to get that there's a big difference. But one of the things, and I don't know if you all agree with this or not, one of the things is that, I mean, obviously, if you have a very robust definition of acceptance, the distinction I'm going to say may not apply, but one of the things that I find is when acceptance turns into resignation, right? That's a form of acceptance you want to watch a little bit, in my opinion, right? Where, and yet that might be a necessary part of your level of acceptance. You might first have to resign to it. But to me, the general thing I want to say is sometimes acceptance for me doesn't feel organic enough for me to explore my own experience. Okay, so I'm going to try to flesh that out over time, that acceptance often can be just so psychological, kind of a top-down thing. Okay, I'm never going to be able to do that. Like, well, I think it was Clementine wrote something about not being able to drive a car and hold a baby. Those are all true. And that's not going to be able to be changed. So there's levels, well, I don't know if it can be changed for you, Clementine, I'm not sure, but like there's levels of where you just have to go, ugh. And notice when you accept something, think about something in your life you've had to accept. Typically, either you hold your breath when you think about what it is you're having to accept, you kind of drop the presence in your body, right? You don't typically go, oh, I accept this, right? Right? You're not expanding when you're accepting. You're actually kind of letting things drop as like, okay, that's just how the world is. And I think the thing about when you know, and yet it is the case. This is a board member said this to me actually about the whole mission of Mind Body Solutions. He said, you know, you got to be careful, Matt. It's every time you try to wrestle with reality, reality will always win. Right. And so, you know, there's the part of what's just the reality part, which I may or may not want to accept, but I do have to allow. And once I allow what's true, a whole bunch of other possibilities start to arise. One of the things that I think in my arc of 42 years of living with a disability, I have at times accepted too much. Now that doesn't, and I don't mean like I accepted it, like, but and it's not true. I mean like for example, one of the things that's in our teaching method in adaptive yoga is, and this came from working with Joe in a lot of ways. I came to accept too quickly that, and I see this in a lot of the people I work with, you accept a loss of rhythm too quickly on the inside of your body, right? That because your actions, if you have like neurological deficits that maybe aren't as balanced or as coordinated, you actually throw out a sense of internal rhythm, which I think is a profound mistake, right? In terms of living in whatever body you have, that there tends to be, when I accepted, and this is the story I'm going to read to try to launch this part of the thing. There's a really crucial scene in Waking where okay, and you know, again, I have an acquired disability, which is different than being necessarily born with one, which I think is an important distinction to keep trying to draw out. But basically, I'm still in intensive care, or I'm just out of intensive care. My brother, who's having my older brother's having a remarkably hard time accepting that I'm never going to walk again. Okay, so he and we wrestled together, we played together, he was 4.5 years older than me, but I went with them everywhere. And we just had this amazing physical relationship of playfulness and roughhousing and everything in between, sports, everything. And he starts trying to like look at me, and with his own grief, he's trying to get me to not accept just carte blanche that I'm never gonna walk again. Okay, and I'm in love with my brother, right? So I want to please him. Okay, so I actually, at one point, as I'm maybe just coming out of intensive care after like 3 weeks, I announced to my doctors that I'm going to walk again. And the conversation, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but the conversation started, a whole series of conversations started to ensue. And she looks at me kind of patiently, but in that stoned, doesn't want to give any support to what she thinks is and which she is correct, because that's the reality of it, right? Because my spinal cord is severed. An expectation or a hope that can't go anywhere. And she's worried that if I don't accept that, I'm going to not accept my condition, which, by the way, reality is going to show me I'm never going to walk again. So getting my intellectual or mental acceding to it as a 13-year-old boy is an interesting strategy. So she says, well, you know, and she was this conversation, I remember still vividly, that she kind of went me through the probabilities of whether I would get hit by a meteor, right? And said, and basically her conclusion was, your chances of getting more likely to be hit by a meteor than ever walking again, which is, you know, probably true. I have no idea, right? Hit by lightning, I guess that's 1,000,000 to 1. That's probably, you know, whatever. So that part's true. But then the thing they start trying to convince me of is that I have no sensation below my point of injury. Okay, so, and that doesn't map onto my experience. Like as in Waking, if you've read it, I talk about feeling a tingling or a hum or a buzz or a sense of presence in my lower body. And I end up having this, so here's where I'm gonna start reading. I should plan on never walking, that I will experience no sensation below my point of injury, because she's worried I might harbor false hopes. Dr. Quinlan is her name. The last part confuses me. At first, when I tried to feel with my paralyzed body, I felt nothing. Now, here's a big idea. At first, when I tried to experience sensation with my paralyzed body, I felt nothing, because my mind was still trained to listen to only certain cues, right? only the ones that are outer body sensations, right? My brain didn't even, just discarded the other ones, right? In fact, the acute absence of sensation within my experience was alarming. To suddenly, like if you ever had Novocaine and you can't feel your lip or something, it's kind of weird. You pull on it, you're going like, what the hell, right? Imagine that's all over your body, right? But now as I listen more carefully, as my condition improves enough for me to do so, I do feel something. It's not like normal sensation, like what I feel in my arms, but all the same, it is noticeable, tingles, surges, sometimes even mild burning. I tell the doctors, they grimace, worried that I will continue what they perceive as denial. Because they think when I said I was going to walk again, I was in denial, which at that part of me probably was, the one that was trying to like please my brother. And they prefer a powerful and pivotal healing story, one that aims to get rid of any false hopes. So already we're in a paradigm where I'm in hope and it's false and it's my imagination, right? Right, Matt, you are experiencing phantom feelings, like ghosts or spooks. They're not real. And this is a 13-year-old boy, so I can't quite read it like the one, like, where do they come from? We don't know exactly. Our best guess is that they are memory. Your mind remembers feeling your legs and continues to project their presence, even when they're not there. Her fingers pushes her glasses securely back against her nose. Are you sure? They even seem to be there when I'm not thinking about them. Quote from her again, phantom feelings are widely reported by people who suffer amputation. Lying in bed, they swear they have 2 legs and are horrified to discover otherwise. The feelings can continue for quite a while. Some people even report them as downright painful. They are more of an annoyance than anything else. Luckily, as the mind forgets, these imagined sensations will fade. So I'm feeling what an amputee feels? Yes. Not the best healing story. Comparing my paralyzed legs to amputated ones only heightens my sense that they have become pointless, right? So then is it like, as a 13-year-old kid, so how do I know that what I'm feeling are phantom feelings? How do you know? She says, trust me, I know. So I just accept, right? But then I can't quite, and I actually, I start to argue with them the next day because I got nothing to do but lay there. I can't roll over. I can't do anything. I got nothing to do but sit there and go, wait, I swear to God, I could feel where I am in space or something, right? So then they invite, cometh the hammer. Not one, but 2 neurologists enter my room. They look young, so they must be residents. I tell them the story. They patiently listen. Well, let's check it out. They have come prepared. A black case opens. It contains various needles, rubber mallets, and small hammers, some with rollers, some with spikes. We use these things to test sensation. Don't worry, none of this will hurt. First, they test my arms. They poke my finger with a needle and then the roller hammer over my upper arm, show me the reflex in my elbow. Next, they move to my feet and repeat the tests. Are you feeling any of those sensations? Any changes? They ask. I am quiet. How about this? I say nothing. And they go, I just stuck your toe hard enough to make it bleed and you didn't feel anything? Again, silence. Do you want us to show you again? I'm feeling sick and fighting back tears of humiliation. See, whatever you are feeling is not connected to anything. These sensations are not real. They exist only in your head. We're sorry, right? These doctors are setting my reality picture. They seal the healing story with shame. Now I'm an object of pity. They leave. Stupid boy, I say to myself. What were you thinking? Right, and so what ends up happening, and it's an absurd scene in the book, is the next day I wake up and I say to my mom, maybe I should get my legs amputated. So I'm thinking I got my upper arms. They're going to get tired, which they have. 42 years later, I have a torn rotator cuff, right? And I'm thinking, well, why don't I just get rid of them? And the doctor, my mom tries to tell me, you just, any of you who are parents know that there's some conversation you have no answer for. You just say, you just can't do that. So she tried the old mom thing. You just can't amputate your legs for no good reason. That's not what you do to your body. But I'm thinking I'm smart. I think I'm problem solving my life based on a wide-ranging level of acceptance that was set by the adults, right? And the doctor says, no, you can't do that. And then I said, why not? And I lay out my reasons for wanting to amputate my legs. And he goes, well, and then he tries to convince me with this idea that, well, if you don't have legs and you don't have abdominal control, how are you going to sit up and balance? That in fact, you need your legs as counterweight. That was his line, to actually be able to sit up. And what was shocking to me was the idea of keeping your legs because they're counterweight. Now think about all the stories that are like again, a reality picture is getting set. But then what really makes me start crying is I didn't know my abdominal muscles were paralyzed because I was still laying in bed. So all this acceptance before I begin my own experience, right? And so acceptance for me, and I may be more extreme on this than you, psychological acceptance for me has a deadening sensation to it. It ends up, especially when it comes to my body and whatever, that it ends up making me go, okay, and I'm really good at it, by the way, I'm an expert at it. I accept things all the time. My problem for me, one of the things that I have to work on living with a disability is to not accept everything carte blanche, right? But what happens, and if you've read Waking, you know what happens is when you acceptance for me triggers my will. Okay, so I tend to one of the things I don't want to accept, I want to frickin' spit out. Okay, and here comes my will, right? And that ultimately, that exchange is the very beginning of why I'm going to break my leg doing yoga 2.5 years into yoga, is I start using my will. So first I go through 12 years of accepting that there's going to be no sensation and working to either disprove people that it's going to matter, right? To show like I might have all this to live with, but I'm going to show you that I'm as effective as if I weren't paralyzed, right? Or I just am willing to will through a whole bunch of the world that I've allowed myself to be shut off on. In retrospect, I realized that when I accepted the idea that I had no sensation below my point of injury, that I left part of myself on the table, not my psychological self, my being, what I am, the parts of me that are here and tangible, and the parts of me that are less tangible and less here are part of what make up what I am. And in that moment, that 13-year-old boy shut a doorway to a whole bunch of air and light, except it's not light like you'd normal. So later I compare the rehabilitation model to walking into a dark room. So let me give you this image, right? In Waking. And it's part of what I think that sometimes, because we're trying to trigger will in someone to overcome their disability, our culture does, that this is the type of story we get. So the image is just, what the heck? Could have sworn I knew exactly the page it's on. Imagine walking from a well-lit room into a dark one. Imagine the darkness as a visual expression of silence, right? My rehabilitation made the mistake with the silence by focusing strictly on the absence of light. It too quickly accepted the loss and taught me to willfully strike out against the darkness. It taught me to move faster rather than slower, push harder rather than softer. It guided me to compensate for what I could not see, right? Another course of action, however, is patience. Is it really patience if you grit your teeth, hold your breath, and wait for something to change, by the way? Or is that tolerance? What's the difference between tolerance and compassion, right? What's the difference between patience and being willing to accept something just as a hammer blow, right? They're different. So another course of action is patience. Stop moving, wait for the eyes to adjust, allow for stillness, and then see what's possible. Although full-fledged vision does not return, usually there is enough light to find one's way across the room. After a while, the moon may come out, sounds might gain texture, and the world might reveal itself once again, only darker. So the thing is, this story about having the light turned off hits a cultural meme. We admire heroes that refuse to fall without a fight. We admire the 80-year-old that runs a triathlon still. This is part of our healing meme. Guess what? I'm interested in all of your lives for the whole arc of your life. Not now, not when, because your will run out. Guess what happens with reality? Your will is overmatched by the long-term arc of the 100 years of the reality of your life, or however long we're going to live. Hope I don't live that long, but actually your will is only a short-term strategy. One of the main driving insights that guides all of mind body solutions is to recognize and allow what I am before my expectations of what I think I should be. And that is part of what I hope you're all getting out of the way we practice yoga together, is that there is a landing here in whatever it is that is part of what you are. Again, the who you are question is a good one. It's a psychological question. It has to do with like, you know, knowing yourself and all those things. But then there's this other layer of what we are, that how can you access that part of you? And I'm telling you, one of my insights is you can't access in your yoga poses, but you can't access that level of your dimension with will. You're gonna have to allow. And so one of the things that I'm trying to point out in this workshop is that this idea of allowing, not only do I like, did anyone ever read The Little Prince? Or yeah, The Little Prince, he's and you meet the king that's on the planet that never had anyone disobey his orders ever, because he never gave, he'd always ask someone, well, if I asked you to go and get me a glass of water, would you get me a glass of water? He asked before, and they say yes, and then he orders. So he's never had something disobeyed because he's always asking before, right? I love that vision of being the king of your own planet. That to me, there's something very importantly different about allowing certain things rather than accepting certain things. So as with those stories that are going about the, you know, the unbelievable stories in Target, I didn't realize Target was like, that was one of the central places, right? Is how do you allow the world to be as goofy as it is without having to grit your teeth and just accept it, right? How do you allow that there's sensation in your body without being able to prove it to yourself? Right? Because if you have to like prove it, touch it, squeeze it, lift a 10-pound weight with it, guess what? My legs are never going to lift a 10-pound weight again. I'm willing to accept that. That's reality. I'm not willing to accept someone else's version of what I can or cannot see or cannot feel, right? That my own experience of my body from inside to out. So I'm being struck by, I can't quite imagine. I've been pretty tired the last couple of months. So I'm thinking about, Jenny, I'm still stuck on the chronic fatigue thing, right? But like that there's a, you know, fatigue sucks, and then there's got to be also things about it too, not good things necessarily, but it, you know, when I'm really fatigued, unfortunately pain is worse, right? But there is a level of dimension, like the hopefully when you're fatigued, I'm hoping when you live with chronic fatigue, when you finally lay down, it feels better. I'm hoping there's some relief, maybe not, a little bit, yeah. But my point is that after I accept, that's the beginning of the journey, right? As opposed to thinking that in order to have my own space, I have to crash through the things I don't want to accept. If I see them as barriers and I have to crash through them, I'm never going to get more of what I am. I'm going to just spend my life trying to overcome the world that's putting constraints that are wrong. So part of this idea of accepting is allowing more of your experience and using that as the beginning. And so I hate things like whatever happens is a gift, or it's a gift that I was born with this, or acquired this. I actually think that's a crock of shit that other people say. You know, they're actually trying to, or you're trying to make meaning of a thing that, no, it's hard living with disability. But there's a level here. So like, whether some of you look comfortable, but if you sit up straight and tall for a second, or a little bit more, sit up straight and tall. And so try to be more aware of the space between your shoulders and your ears. Okay, like why would you ever want to do that, right? Does anyone feel that once you try to start to be aware here, something has to change on your sitting bones? You have to change how you're sitting in the chair? Like all of a sudden something has to come online, right? Like, so allow that this is part of your presence here for a second, right? Now, over grip your jaw for a second and clench your teeth and ask yourself, can you actually feel, you can feel your muscles here, but can you sense the space here? Not as well. Re-soften, try to feel the space, but soften the inside of your mouth, around the jaw. Start to go back, pratyahara, away from the senses, right? Don't stare at the screen. Then from this level of awareness, start to feel your sitting bones and feet and start to lift your chest. When you start doing it that way, does it make you want to inhale? Can you feel like the inhalation that starts to happen? The moving back, the sensation that's less tangible starts to bring you a spark that makes you want to inhale, which to me feels very different than what I typically do when I'm accepting too much. Or I'm like getting the, okay, yeah, I get it. I don't get to do that anymore. I get it. No, I can take it. I'm freaking tough. Can you hear? That's going to be the energy that's going to break my femur bone in yoga when I start. And it's funny to like be able to trace the places because I was being asked to accept too much. My will got pissed. I all of a sudden started yoga and went, oh my God, they were wrong. But then my will was the one, got going again. And I pushed against my limits. And like my healing story now is I broke my femur bone so you don't have to. Right? That's why I want to pass on things like this, that like, you don't need to do that. Right? You have nothing to prove. You have no barrier to explode through, unless that's what you choose to do, right? Go ahead, choose that. You can fight against certain barriers. In a way, I've been on swimming upstream the whole time with Mind Body Solutions, trying to get the medical model to incorporate this level of subtlety that we already know exists, but may not be clinically relevant for how they see my condition, right? So I'm not without will, right? So anyone want to make comment on what I've tried to lay out here as a distinction? Intuitively, can you feel what I'm trying to say? How one is a metaphorical exhale and an invitation to my inorganic will. And the allowing energy makes me at least want to feel more like an explorer within my experience. Like the world around me has now presented, and people live with chronic pain, like Rodrigo, you have, on some level you have to accept that level of chronic pain, but you don't, you have to work on things, but you also have to find a way to let the pain guide you, to actually come into your experience and not just push against your experience. There are all these ways that it's useful not to just try to overcome. Anyone have any comments?
Yeah, Matt, I guess.
Jennifer Bond Baker.
I was going to ask you, can you hear me?
Yep.
I was going to ask you, do you think it's also the difference between accepting like the fact that we have right now, you have right this minute right now, and a lot of times we get trapped into thinking of what we want things to be or the way things were. We're always sort of navigating between past and future instead of, I find acceptance being just like right now. This is what I have right now.
See, I think that what you're explaining and what you're saying is a very powerful technique to allowing, right? So to think about it just in terms of the present, right? Like, and that's, I think, again, it's whether, however you get there, if that's, you know, like meditation be one way to like do that, or focusing on the present and the now. I think that's incredibly powerful.
But isn't that reality? Isn't now the reality? Because
Yeah.
you don't have the
Yeah.
future and you don't have the past. I think
Yeah,
it works with what you were saying about reality.
I think that's a very powerful way of looking at it. And Eckhart Tolle, you know, obviously has made that into a whole system of action. And you know, any of his stuff, his book's The Power of Now, right? It's great stuff. And then there's also the old wisdom from David Whyte, the poet philosopher, saying, it's an old Irish saying, the thing about the past is that it's not really the past, right? That we end up being multidimensional beings, right? And we do have access to the thoughts about the future. And so we have to find the present in this tumult of multiple planes of existence, right? So I think that's what I do when I really need to allow. I basically do Shavasana. My Shavasana is a practice of taking nourishment in the now, right? Like, so those things are, but Laura, you got your hand up, but are so yes, do what you're saying because it works. I'm all about what works, right? Like really, because if you're getting access to a level of strength and resilience by focusing on the now instead of like thinking about the future, yeah, the future is always going to create anxiety.
Anyway, it helped me.
Yeah, no, I think it helps all of us. It's
And
one of the things that I like to have.
Too.
What was that?
You can call me Jenny.
Okay, all right. Laura.
Yeah, I just want to, I guess I just want to come back to what you sort of asked me before I came on. You were saying like that you don't know, you were like wanting me asking me what's the difference because you acquired. And I don't think there's any difference, because I think that, like, obviously when you were reading your book, it's more, you know, you had a more dramatic entrance than most people to that. But I think acceptance is slow, especially for a child. I don't think you accept it like, oh, look, now I don't do this anymore. Like, I had those same conversations with doctors at that same age, exactly like you had. I was like, well, but what does it mean if I can still do this? And they're like, no, you can't. And I was like, no, but I can. And then when I started doing a certain type of physio, they were like, you shouldn't do that. You should just go home and enjoy your life, and don't do this because it's not going to cure anything. And I was like, I know that, but I'm not going for it to cure anything. I'm just going to see what happens, or what I may get back, or, you know, get stronger. And they were like, no, because you see, this is an unacceptable, like, you're going to think that it's going to get better and it's not. And I was like, but I was like, I'm not. And the fear of the sort of hope that I was going to cling on to was we kept having that conversation. And I remember sitting down once and being like, don't worry, I know that it's not going to make anything drastically better. But I remember reading that in your book, The Time, about the dark room, and sort of growing this image in my mind, like, oh, I don't have to shut the door. I can leave the door slightly open. Like, I don't have to be, not ever walking again is different to knowing, well, if I kept this level of activity up, could I get better at this, or could I get stronger, or could my level of awareness of sensation get better? Like, I think they're so afraid of letting you grasp onto that bit that all of it
and live the space between, right?
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of space between flat acceptance and healing as recovery or whatever, right? And that's the thing, as you know, as you live your life with a disability, if you don't find a way to explore,
then you're in real trouble.
And the culture is always, in my opinion, pushing us to overcome it.
Yeah, because you know, when you were saying our healing story, like I've often said to you, in the culture is like, I overcame, rather than, oh, look, I went from this place to this place and it's better now than it was before, rather than, and I think that medical model is slightly why, like, my family are constantly having conversation with me. Like, I'm like, oh, well, I can't do that, so I'm just not gonna do it. And they're like, couldn't you just try the
Right.
bit? And I'm like, okay, because there's a fear of opening your mind to what you get attached to, you know.
Yeah,
um,
it is all true. And
it's
often
I
the
don't
loved
think,
ones are the ones that are pushing you to constantly overcome
yeah, and
rather, rather than take in your own experience.
I think it's just knowing that you like it's like opening it for possibility, you know, rather than curing or healing.
Exactly.
Is all I'm sort of going for these days. But yeah, so I think just I don't think it's that much different. And I don't
That's what I want to explore
anyone.
over time, because if you don't know, Laura was born with spina bifida, so she's paralyzed too, right? And I break my back, and so it's just, there's always the thing that when you're born with a condition and you acquire
Yeah,
it, who knows what the differences are,
yeah,
and I think there's going to be some differences, and a lot of it's going to be the same. And
sure. But I think when I
yeah,
read your book in the beginning, one of the reasons I wanted to come was because I was like, oh, that's exactly the same thing that I did with those people, you know, in a different way. So I don't know that it's
exactly. Does anyone else have any comments?
Matt, this is Amy. Anthony Armstrong has an interesting comment. He says, this discussion of acceptance sounds parallel to the complicated issues of forgiveness that we all tackle.
Hey, Andrew, do you want to come in and say something? Anthony, pardon me.
Yeah, Anthony.
Will you,
Yeah,
you
he's
want to come in?
unmuted.
That sounds like one of those mind baking, noodle baking things that I have to, a little more context might help.
Well, you know, it's like, I mean, forgiveness is like, the issue of forgiveness is, you know, sometimes I've listened to different people approach that subject, and it's, everyone approaches it really differently. And it's almost like people approach it so differently. Like, I can't, it's like it's like they're talking about a different subject. It's a very, like, you know, the idea of like, you know, how necessary it is to forgive. And I can't think off the top of my head because it's
Yeah, no, I think I know what you're saying. I think what you're saying is very provocative, because I think that when there's well, I have to forgive you, that's an active will and acceptance, you have to, like, people do bad things, and then there's the forgiveness that's actually cleansing for the person carrying the injury too, right? That it's an expansion, a re-expansion of who you are, not just a forgiveness of other, right? So and I think that may be, that's why I'm really intrigued by the parallel you're intuitively grasping here, or trying to make, because it's like there is something in there, you know, because I struggled thinking about this distinction, and I want to teach some yoga here pretty quick, where what I want, when I allow instead of have to accept, I kind of feel like I want to lift my chest when I'm allowing, and if you're going to be a crazy culture out there, great. I don't have to worry you on the inside of me. You can be here. I can be here, right? And I can just allow that you are that, or I can allow what my life is. And I feel like forgiveness has got kind of like what gratitude is. You know, gratitude's a transcendent mind-body solution. So I was just on with someone, an expert who works with yoga with veterans. And one of their 5 pillars is gratitude. Gratitude's another thing that if you can feel without it having to be attached to an object or a happening on the outside of your life, it actually is an embodying sensation if you let it be all the way through, right? And so I kind of feel like Anthony's intuitively making a connection with forgiveness there. That is what I mean by, when you allow something as opposed to accept something, there's an expansion of allowing it, right? And an exploration in what that is, that you know, instead of yeah, I think that's it. But let's do a little bit of yoga, right? So one of the things that you, and then for more discussion as we practice, I'll stay on a little bit after for the after hours, you know, the extra stuff of questions and whatever that is, and we can talk more. But so just pay attention a little bit more to your exhale, right? So that's right. But that, I want you to practice that as a relief, right? A letting go. So we've been thinking kind of hard here, and there's this, and so remember, there's a part of you that's integrated to the space around you. So part of your nervous system is actually connected to what's around you. And it turns out that and that's not something like the loss that I've encountered in my life is not necessarily I just have to accept. I have to feel, right? And so on exhalation, I start to just quiet down a little bit more. And I let, and when I'm exhaling and not working against gravity, I tend to fall into the vastness of what's below me, right? So that's what you're doing at first. And now, stopping now, I'm going to start this off like it almost seems like Shavasana, right? But we're not. We're trying to allow another level of sensation. So your mind is a subset of what comes in from your body to your brain, right? And then your brain is getting all this information from your body, and it's not used to listening to it. So we're trying to calm down the mind so our brain filters more input to our mind, right? And so softening, like the skin on the forehead, around the temples, the jaw, the inside of the mouth, the organs of perception. This isn't just the letting go, the allowing that comes from that. We're using that to hear more, to allow more input from the brain to my mind of the happening. So now just pay a little bit more attention to the beginning of the inhalation, the spark of it, the expansion of it. But don't lose track of the letting go of the exhalation. So there's an interplay between the letting go, feeling the emptiness, the quiet emptiness, and then filling that with inhalation. And now more overtly add your body. Start lifting your chest. So the inhalation is going to already be lifting your chest some. But now I want you to now feel where your sitting bones are on your feet and sit up a little bit straighter and taller. So now this interplay between exhalation and then inhalation is encountering structure, right? It's happening within structure. Think of the structure as tent pegs on your tent that allows you to realize the inside of your tent, right? If you didn't have the pegs holding down the corners of the tent, the wind would just blow it around, right? You'd have no realization. So the structure of your body, and especially emotionally, a lot of us are afraid of what's quiet. But what if that's the source of your inner resilience? So you now start to hit down with your sitting bones, lift the chest up, press down to the inner edges of your feet, extend up to the top of your head. So now there's a vertical line coming with effort, right? Your brain is now receiving more information because your effort is like turning on the light. But now I want you to do things like broaden across your collarbones and across your back ribs. Mm-hmm. So you're feeling more of your container. It's becoming more invigorating. And then release. You get to fill the world, right? Doesn't depend on whether I can get upstairs at all my friends' houses, right? So now I just want you to take your left arm up and let it be a stretch here, right? Just let it go lengthen here, right? And then come back and go the other way. And you're actually listening. You're trying to, how do you feel your skin? Well, your mind has to get quieter, and your mind has to stop judging so much, and then go the other way. So you can start having subtle sensations come in. And maybe because you're a yogi, you can notice, like I can feel the skin less well when I go this way on this part of my body. Right? And that's part of what I'm looking for. Then I want you to lift up if you can, and if not, just whatever you can come off the seat. But I want you to make length and feel length. So there's like a hanging in your low back. right? That space then collapses when you sit back down. And then go back up and go, wait, can I keep some of that as I sit back down? How much does gravity have to collect me? Now I'm going to lean forward and lift your chest. Now, as you're starting to do this, ask yourself, are you tense in the inside of your mouth? Have you already shut down your organs of perception a little bit? Probably. That's okay. You just suck as a yogi. No, everything takes practice. I catch my instructions come from how I'm doing it wrong all the time, right? And then go back over the back of your chair. So now what kind of awareness is required for me to be more conscious? And don't do this if you're dizzy, get dizzy, but how do I lengthen from this part of my chest underneath my chin as a way to take my head back? And when I do that, what do I hear? Can I feel my sitting bones and my feet more? Turns out, yes. When I move a little slower and then come back, right? And lean over to the right. Now, I hope that you, as you lean over and are doing yoga, this type of consciousness, now imagine trying to read a book while you're doing this. Could you do yoga as well if you're reading a book right now? No. You need to go inward and soften. So you need not to focus your eyes. Now lengthen from your sternum up to from your pubic bone up towards your sternum. Broaden this way. Lengthen out the top of your head, but stay inward and outward. So I can't tell you, and then go and come back to center. I can't tell you how long, and before I did yoga, I only thought movement was movement. I just thought I was just moving. Now go the other way. I just kind of would go, yeah, what do you want? Is this, so a beginning yoga usually gets impatient, like, come on, I want more. But wait, oh my God, the universe is here. The whole bunch of, all of yoga is here as I lean over and start to move inward enough to feel more subtlety, right? This is a time where you have to be allowing that there's more sensation. So I want to feel both sides of my rib cage, both sitting bones, both heels, and then come on back to center. And then lift up again, right? And then you're going to go this way. Now, can you keep this inward focus? Keep the softness of the skin on your face. Lengthen this way, feel both sides of your rib cage, open here and on the underside, right? It's hard once you're leaned over. This side gets covered up, right? In order to get to this side, guess what? I'm having to soften my organs of perception. I'm having to quiet my mind down. Now I want it to become more expansive. Take your arm up. Now take your arm down. Now see if what's true for me isn't also true for you, right? When I take my arm up in a second, when my chest is lifted and I'm expanding, when I take my arm up, I can actually feel my legs more, right? So I'm not just taking my arm up, I'm allowing a vastness in every movement. So as I extend and open here, I try to feel that in terms of my right foot and right hip. I'm allowing that there may be connections in my nervous system that my mind isn't used to hearing, but my brain is receiving. Guess what? That game operation where the nose bone's connected to the ankle bone, it's all true. It's actually all true. We're a unified organism, right? Our minds are able to leave the body. That's the difference, right? Our body stays connected and then go the other way. And so you're feeling all this, and like then you take the arm up, and hopefully you feel that space in your low back from hanging, and you haven't forgot that sensation. And at first you just think, oh, the yoga pose is to take my arm up. No, and then take your arm down. The yoga pose, the fuller yoga pose, was to, as you open here, to feel it everywhere else. Take your arm up again. Bring the shoulder girdle, the shoulder blade down, lengthen out through the arms, feel the skin on your upper arm lengthening. Use that connection between a sturdy here and a stretching here. Use that connection to breathe into your legs, right? So you actually are using a movement in one place and allowing that it's connected to the whole place. Good, and then release. And then come on back to center. So one of the things that I learned in Shavasana, okay, was that the empty space in me is actually already unified with every part of my body. Okay, now that comes from Shavasana, not from being able to do a whole bunch of different things physically. That I had to, and that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that level of connection that comes from allowing that sensation is all modulated throughout your whole body, right? So again, lift up, because if you're feeling, if you're sitting all the time and you're compressing your low back, you're not going to feel as much connection between your spine and your legs, which is why there are things like dog pose and all the standing poses are trying to get you to separate and differentiate your legs from your spine. All right, so now I want you to back up a little bit, or I'm backing up so you can see, pardon me, you don't have to back up a little bit. That's me talking to me, right? And I want you to take your legs a little bit wider. And so you're changing your base, right? And now I could think that this is not important action and wait for the next instruction. Or I could let this change teach me because my base has changed. Now, for me, it's probably easier because I don't have my legs wide very often. Some of you that can walk around better than me or can walk around at all, this doesn't seem like fireworks. It's like fireworks, but I'm gonna mark it. I want you to like take the inside of your arms and broaden, push out. Now, as this space is getting open and your groins are getting lengthened some, lift your chest. Now ground your sitting bones and extend out beyond your knees. Take a couple of breaths and then release. So here's one of the paradoxes in yoga poses always. I say it in the trainings I give to yoga teachers a lot, for yoga teachers, is like there's no such thing as a one-way street in yoga. Okay, so I want you to again do what we just did. And I now told you to extend out beyond your knee into air as you lift your chest. Right, so it seems like I'm just telling you to go one direction, but like every single yoga pose, that's not true. It's not just going in one direction. So take your right hand and push back with your hand on your knee if you can. Push it back, your femur bone, that back towards your femur bone. As that energy is going back, I want you to push into your hand. And I want your mind to be aware of both. Both you pushing this way and feeling it come back towards your spine. When you feel both directions, does anyone feel that there's an opportunity to lift your chest better? Yep. And then you got to do the other side, right? So you've got this weird thing where I want you to push back your femur bone and push into your femur bone. Register both with the part of you that allows. Your mind will not be able to understand how it's getting this sensation of going in two directions. Your mind is not in charge here. Sensation is. So you're feeling that pressure back towards, you're observing that with your mind, and you're pushing out into your knee. And you're using that two-way street to help you lift your chest and breathe. And then release. And sit in the center for a second. So because I like to keep moving in poses, bring your legs back together. Just like in traditional classes, people come back to Tadasana, right? So then I'm gonna like mark my midline by pushing in my femur bones and my knees because I wanna find my midline. Because when my legs have been wide, this awareness tends to leave a little bit. So I'm grounding my legs and finding my midline. And notice I'm coming forward to do that. and I'm lifting my chest, which so you're not that far from like upward facing dog and a whole bunch of things. But I'm wanting to find where I am so I can keep this part of me with me as my body gets into more space. So then take your legs wide again. So as you're moving like this, the constant check-in is, are you keeping your organs of perception soft? Right? That's one, are you feeling spaces around you in the room? So again, I'm feeling the space here. Now, I'm gonna lean over to one side. Now here's a chair here if I wanted it, but I'll just go on my elbow because some of you don't have a chair there. Right, so now I feel what this feels like and lift my chest. Now I come back. Now I'm gonna put my hand on my knee and come over. I gotta figure out how to do this, right, so I don't fall over. And now I'm gonna push into my hand, push my hand into my knee and lift my chest. And feel what it's like to have activation in this back leg, okay? And then release. So now I wanna keep that feeling this way and this way and take my arm up, right? So now I want you to get, this goes this way, this goes this way, this goes open. And you have to not just imagine this stuff, frickin' feel it. It's already true. Breathe into what's true. Good, and then release. Now you're gonna sit in the center again, and you're gonna push in on this knee. Remember what this feels like. Now you're gonna change gravity, push into this back knee. Feel that sensation of grounding. Open the spine, right? Now push your knee into your hand. Keep that more action. Take the arm up, right? So this goes up and your legs are working like crazy. Breathe. Feel. Release. Come back to the midline. Bring your legs back together. I can tell you that if I had just seen my experience as the loss that I was being told about, being told to accept, I never would have become a yoga student, right? But what's interesting is that I had to find, and we've all had to find as adaptive yoga students, like a third way. It's not that I didn't accept that I couldn't feel my legs in the same way that someone didn't have a spinal sever cord. And if I thought about having to accept that, I would have pushed to find the next space. You don't get to push to find the subtle dimensions of yoga. It doesn't happen that way. You have to allow it. And to allow, you're gonna have to figure out ways to learn how to put your brain in neutral. Make your brain, literally your brain, passive, while your mind is being active with moving your body. So as we go to close here a little bit, great way to make your brain passive is to put reference, put your hand if you can, right? And if you can't, like Michael, if you can't put it easily on your forehead, just feel like you had a coin pressing against right between on your forehead, above your eyebrow, right? So just lightly put your heel of your hands on the bridge of your nose. Your fingertips are near your hairline. And just gently calm down your judging mind with the presence of your hand. From this calmer feeling in your mind, your brain, feel where your whole body is. Notice your breath. Notice symmetry. each foot, each knee, each sitting bone, each shoulder. But take that into a more passive brain. Your wholeness does not come from overcoming, it comes from allowing. The hope of yoga is to get more of you. The hope of asana is to get more of you, and then take your hand down and release, is to get more of you in your action. So we're just going to do a really quick Shavasana. So I want to feel symmetry. But again, so it's like the first part of Shavasana is like water hitting the floor, kind of. You just kind of landing in it, and then let it spread out. Let it find its quiet. So you just drop and spread. Soften your jaw, the inside of your mouth. Shavasana is in every single pose. This level without your judging mind, though. In a pose, your mind has to be active. In Shavasana, your mind's trying to be active and your brain's trying to be neutral. So again, sovereign on the temples, the inside of the mouth, and feel the support of your chair. Start to bring yourself back. The spark. Follow the inhalation, a little deeper inhalation, a little longer exhalation. When you're ready, open your eyes. If it's too quick, close your eyes again, and then choose to open them. So one of the things that's been interesting for me is, now I've 55 and some of the changes that come with age, and I find a lesson that I learned from being disabled is like becoming more and more important, that there's a big difference between allowing changes and accepting changes. And when I can find the space, when I allow rather than accept, my senses are more alive. My mind isn't squeezing what's around me, right? And so I hope that in your yoga practice, for sure, it doesn't mean you're not supposed to work hard. It means you're supposed to have more broth in the soup, right? As you're trying to move and navigate your life, right? And it comes from a whole different relationship. And it turns out a whole bunch of weird things will be shown in yoga. It's like when you start being more aware of your skin, you'll start to allow more. When you start to feel your bones more, you'll start to be able to allow more. Like there are all these things that what I love so much about yoga is these insights that seem psychological are not psychological, they're literal. They actually happen when you include your body. And your body has way more intelligence than you know. No matter what it's not doing right for you, oh my God. Like, when Jenny was talking about the present and the now, your body's always in the now, by the way. Always. It's now. Your mind goes all over the place, right? Your presence of your body's the now. So I'll stay on for a while, but thanks for joining in. Keep the next one. Does anyone have the date in front of them? I don't even know what it's about right now, but no, I got to tell you, these are the most challenging things I do. When I prepare for these, oh my goodness, I'm the most nervous And I'm the most worried that I'll be saying things that I'll be all alone in saying. Because you're the ones that have the greatest hope of hearing what I'm saying, because you already live it. And that actually increases the pressure to me, because gosh, if I can do it right, I'll actually feel company. So September 22nd, finding your voice. Yikes. What's the relationship between your voice and your spine, by the way? Do you know you talk out of your mouth, which is the top of your spine? You know that Patanjali wrote a book on grammar? What the hell? What are those crazy yogis talking about? Yeah, that's what we'll be talking about next time. Finding your voice in relationship to a effed up world that asks you in Target how you have sex. Because all I can do is repeat that. I got no rejoinder for that one. That's a happening you just can't make up, right? All right, everybody, we'll stay on for a continued discussion, but thanks for joining us. Come to the next one on September 22nd. And if you have any comments about this, please write to us. Please let us know, right? That would be great.